Hey everyone, this is Alfred from The Prompted, and let's upgrade your Shopify store. So on this channel, we've been sharing customizations to upgrade your Shopify themes with more features. Maybe it's adding swatches, adding images to the navigation menus, adding custom icons, or a cart progress bar. But whatever it is, we've been building these features so that you can give your own customers a better experience, with the goal of increasing your store's conversion rate, or AOV, which ultimately can lead to more sales. But each one of you has a unique store. You all sell different products in different niches, in different markets, with your own brand voice and marketing styles. All that to say, there's an infinite number of needs and preferences that you're all looking for. So while we try our best to design these features in a way that works for the majority of you, the reality is that oftentimes you might want or even need something a little bit different. So because there's so many different ways to design a store, and some of the most common questions that we get are how to make formatting changes, I think it's a good idea to at least know how to make some of these changes yourself. And so that's what we're going to be looking at in this video. We'll be exploring a few different concepts on how to do this, including how you can use AI chatbots like ChatGPT to help out. And we'll start off with simpler examples. So if you're learning from it and you want to learn more, then we can actually look at building on top of these concepts in future videos. And if you need more tailored help, then you might be a good fit for stress-free scaling, where we support you on not just the technical side of building your store, but also on the sales and marketing, so that once your store is up and running, you can bring in more customers. So if that's something you're interested in, then sign up for our free email newsletter first, because with that, you'll get a taste of our growth content. And if you like it, then just respond to any one of those emails and we'll share more info with you. To sign up for the newsletter, just follow the link in the description below. All right, let's get back to it and let's explore making your own theme edits. Okay, so for the first concept on making your own theme edits is to actually make them in the theme editor itself. Oftentimes when people think about trying to make edits to the formatting in their Shopify store, they start thinking about, oh, what can I do with the code? But Shopify's theme editor actually has a ton of settings with a lot of customizations that you can make. Maybe actually be enough to make the changes that you're looking for. So let's hop into the theme editor and actually take a look at some of those things. Okay, so we're here in our themes admin and we can just customize. Now, just as a rule of thumb, if you're going to make any changes, it's oftentimes a good idea to duplicate your theme first, because if you make some changes and you forget what you did, or you might want to revert back to your previous version, or you don't like what you're doing, you just have that backup in case something goes wrong, or just to quickly revert back to your previous version. So let's go into customize, and we can actually head over to the theme settings. And then on this left side here, you have all these different settings of formatting changes that you can make in your theme. And just making these formatting changes already gives you a lot of power on how to make your site look and feel a little bit different. Now, this is specific to the Dawn theme here, like these settings here in the Dawn theme, or actually it's probably the same for any of the Shopify developed themes: Dawn, Sense, Taste, Refresh, etc. But a lot of third-party themes will also have their theme settings set up here as well. So let's say, for example, we can look at colors, right? Colors here, you have these different schemes. So you've got, this is more of a black and white scheme, but you can actually have a blue and white scheme. Let's see that in action. And what we'll do is we'll just kind of go through this list and look at how it can change the look and feel of your site. And you might learn that, hey, all you need to make your theme changes are actually right here. So let's go into a product first. How about the prompted t-shirt here? Okay, so here you can actually, with your sections, go into these different sections here, right? You can click on the product information, so that's a section. The related products here is a section, right? So you can see here, and sections are kind of like these different blocks that you can add or remove from the site. Maybe blocks is not the best word to use, because actually these underneath this section, these things here are actually called blocks, but the sections are kind of like blocks, but maybe in terms of the hierarchy, one level up. So they call them sections. But anyway, in your sections, you actually have a number of settings here, right? So you actually can make all sorts of formatting changes in here. One of those changes should be the color. So right here, so scheme, color scheme. And let's change this to blue. There you go. You can quickly change all the text, font, and the background color to this blue color here. And if you don't like this blue, you can make it this black one here, or I guess this is a dark gray. And you can even create your own. So if we come back to the colors area, you can add a scheme. And let's say you want your background, let's see, background instead of white, let's make it a red. And you can even add a gradient. Sure, let's just do that, whatever default is there. And the solid button label. So let's make that red as well. Here. Okay, so this might not look great, but it's just to demonstrate what it could look like. So let's just change it to our scheme here. There we go. So now we've got these crazy colors going on. But right, it just shows you what you can customize in your theme. So that's the colors. And this actually applies to any section that you have on your store, right? So if you go to the related products section, if I can click on it, okay, there we go, right? You've got color scheme right here, right? So you have the same color schemes available to you. You can make this one blue instead of the one that I just had here, right? So now it looks like this. Obviously, this doesn't look the greatest, but you know, it just shows how customizable this all is. It's not just on the product page. You can do this on the collection page. So let's, you know, go to the product grid, and you can see their color scheme. You can choose your own color scheme here. So that's how the color scheme works. You can apply it to all these different sections across all the different pages in your theme. All right, let's move along. So next we have typography, right? So here you can actually change the font type, and you can also change the size. So right now it's by default on Assistant. This is the Dawn theme, so by default it's Assistant. But let's say you want it to be something else, maybe a little bit more blocky. So let's choose this one right here, Armada. Right now your text is a little bit more blocky compared to before. So let's select that. And then that's the headings, right? The headings are this blocky, but the body text, you can see right here, still has the this assistant. So we can change this as well. Sorry, this here I think is the font has changed, but over here it has not. Or if we go to the product page, right, we can see here the title is blocky, but the text here is not. The title is here. So right, so that's where the headings. So headings are like the titles. Those have been changed. So we can do even something different here. So let's, I don't know, let's pick something a little bit more crazy. Okay, how about this one? So this one is a little bit more of a cursive. Yeah, that looks pretty ugly. But, you know, just to demonstrate the changes that you can make. So let's take this off. I don't want to see this anymore. Let's go back to default. I'm just going to refresh to take out all these colors as well, because I haven't saved anything yet. Okay, so we've refreshed. Everything's back to the way it was. And let's move along. Okay, so you've got layout now. So the layout, you can specify your page width and your space between sections. So what does that mean, right? So right now, if a 1200 pixel page width, but what if we dropped it down? We made it, let's say 1000. So you can see here, right? That's the page width here. So on the store itself, right? You've got, I mean, your browser is going to have a certain width, but you're going to say that the page content on your site itself is going to be constrained to this 1,000 pixels. Or if you're okay with it being a little wider, you can actually go a little bit wider. Now, if the browser width doesn't go up to that high, it'll just take up to the maximum width, right? It's not going to go larger than your screen. But if your screen's really large, then it will constrain it to this value, right? And so you could do things like this, and it does it on all your content on your store, right? So we've got these two different sections here. You can see how they're always aligned. Next, you have space between template sections, right? So that's going to be the gap between here. Let's just exaggerate it, just make it 100 pixels. And we should see that be pushed down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Okay, grid affects areas with multiple columns or rows. So that should be between these right here. So right, we've got a grid right here. There's 4 columns, 1 row. So let's do the horizontal space. So let's push this horizontal space much higher. We should see these gaps grow. Yeah, there we go. Right, so you have some control over that. Let's see what else we've got. Animations. We don't typically use too many animations, so let's skip past this one. Buttons. Okay, buttons probably are going to be used a lot, so you could actually make a lot of changes here. So first off, the buttons themselves are affected by the color scheme. So we can go back to the colors, and you can just go into one. You can see here we've got solid button label, solid button background. So these color schemes actually do affect the buttons, and so you can change what they look like color-wise from the schemes. But in here, you can actually also change thickness, opacity, corner radius, and you can also add shadows. So let's see what that could look like. So right now, 1 pixel border, if we like make this really large, you can see how there we go. So you can see how it it's got this really thick border. You can make it less opaque. You've got to add some transparency to it. So it makes it a little bit grayish in this case because it's slightly transparent. Keep in mind this is for the border only, right? And the corner radius, you can add some corners to it, so it's rounds it out. We can also add shadows. So maybe we add a little bit of shadow, and you can see it showing up there, right? So again, some minor formatting changes, but you can get that to change your buttons. It's not just the buttons on the product page, it's all buttons, right? So if we have a button on the, let's say on the home page, maybe on the hero image, you can see here that the button gets affected there as well. Okay, let's move along. Variant pills. Okay, we're going back to the product page. Okay, so these settings are very similar to the buttons, right? We've got the border and shadow. So I could just boost this up and then maybe change the corner radius. And you can see here that our variant pickers are changing, right? So let's say, okay, let's maybe do something a little bit more realistic. So instead of such a thick border, you can have something like this where maybe you don't like your pills to look like, literally a pill, but maybe more of a squarish type of shape. Then you can actually cut down that corner radius and give it a more of a square profile. And that way, it just gives it a different look and feel compared to some other brands if you like sort of the blockish look instead of curves. Let's move on. Inputs. That's probably where we have, say, our search bar right here. Let's see if we add something in there, if it shows up. Yep, there we go. Right, so you can see there's a little shadow showing up. Where else do we have inputs? Maybe down here, yeah, with the email, right? So email, you can enter it there with these drop-down menus. You can also see it there. Right, so anything where you add information you get that shadow. I guess in this case on the bar it's a little bit different because these are drop down menus as text, right? But if you have sort of a selector box like this, you'll see those shadows show up. Okay, let's take that out. Okay, product cards. So that's these guys right here. So this is on the, in this case is related products, but if you go to your collection pages, all the products you see on here are called product cards, right? You can see that gap that we added earlier is also on here. And similar to before, you have the border and shadow that you can add. So let's just kind of demonstrate that. So you can give your products look, a little bit different. It kind of frames the images a little bit. What else do we have? We have some different formatting styles for the card itself. So right now it's a standard. So the image is kind of added like a card, but you can make the whole thing a card. So it actually boxes off everything with the text as well. So now you've got like, something that looks quite different. And if we actually add, what was it? Layout? Yeah, layout. And let's add some vertical space. So let's maybe make it 28 as well. Then now it kind of looks like you've got these cool little cards. Depending on your business and the brand style that you want to portray, then this actually could be kind of useful for you. So where was I? We were at product cards. Okay. So we've had, so style card, image padding. So you can maybe add a few pixels in there and we can see what happens to it. So you can see here that adds a little space all the way around. Right, so I think this only would really be obvious if you're using the card method. If you go to standard, it's probably you're not gonna notice it too much. Oh, actually, because we have the border as well, that's why it shows up. But you take the border out, then we also have the shadow. Okay, so anyway, the padding, what it does is it adds that space. And I guess if you had everything set as default, then it may not be so obvious as what I was trying to say. But because we added the shadow, we added the border, we added all sorts of other things to kind of show where the image ends, that padding actually kind of is there. And so it acts like a pseudo border of some sorts. Okay, text alignment, that's pretty straightforward. You can center it. You can make it to the, you can make it right justified. And then you always have the color schemes like we showed before. So you can change up how this all looks. That's how standard looks like, and card will look even more different. There you go. Okay, so we can keep going down here, but I think you kind of get the idea, right? There's a lot of different options in the theme editor itself. And if you want to make a change to how something looks and feels, the first thing you can do is actually look in the theme editor. And regardless of whether it's something that's pre-built by Shopify or even some of our own customizations, we have built our customizations to also have tons of options and settings and features so that you can make those adjustments yourself. So anything you want to do, first thing to do is actually check the theme editor itself, because maybe you can do something without any code that's already given to you as a customization setting for you to do on your own. So if you're making any formatting changes, the first place to look is actually in the theme editor. There's probably a setting somewhere in there to allow you to make changes for what you want to do. Now, if you can't find the theme setting to do what you want to do, then maybe you need to start looking at another way of doing it. And so that's what we're going to look at now. And that method is through code. Now, if you've never coded before, you have very limited experience, don't worry, this video is for you. And my hope is that by the end of this video, you have learned enough to make changes to your site with the help of AI, while also picking up a few basic coding concepts along the way. It is best to understand what you're doing because Shopify themes are a highly complex system, and one small change can have unintended consequences. It's kind of like baking. So let's say you mix all these ingredients together and you're really careful with the ratios of all the ingredients. Like you need this much flour and that much sugar for it to be just right. But then you see, oh, I'm low on time, and you decide to double the temperature because that halves the cooking time, right? But in the end, you end up with a burnt cake and a raw center. So Shopify themes can be like that, right? You make one change here and you don't really understand what you're doing and it breaks something else down the line. And we want to avoid that from happening. So you have to be really careful with your changes. But since you're still learning, there's one thing you can do to eliminate the risk of breaking something. And that's by duplicating your site before making any changes. And using that duplicated site, it can become your sandbox so that you can make any changes you want without fear of breaking your main theme because you've saved it and backed it up somewhere else. So in this part of the video, we're going to start very simple. We're just going to make some very simple formatting changes, like changing some text fonts, sizes, colors, that type of thing. So we're not going to create any new content, but we're simply formatting existing content for now. Okay, so we're back in the theme editor, and I know I did say we're going to make some code changes, and we are, but we're actually going to be doing it by using this section in our section, right? So we have the setting here called custom CSS, and pretty much any section has that. So if we come to our product information, you've got this custom CSS, you've got this related products, and you've got this custom CSS. And so what I was saying earlier about not making any new content is, maybe we're not adding new features yourself yet, but if you've got a section that you want to add through the theme editor, or if you're installing any one of our customizations, then you can also make CSS changes on top of those. That's what I mean by that. And so here we're going to learn how to add a little bit of CSS to change the styles of our store. So CSS, if you don't know, is the language that's used to modify the styles on your webpage. And then HTML, which you may have heard of, but maybe you know a little bit about it or not so much, is sort of like what defines the content on the page. So one analogy that you can think of it is, if you've used a word processor like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, and the contents, the words themselves, is kind of like the HTML, right? If you take those words and you paste in Notepad and paste back into Microsoft Word, it always stays the same. But the formatting, right? Like whether something's centered or bolded or the font size, all of that is only going to be able to be done in the word processor, like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, but you lose that when it goes to Notepad. So that's kind of like the distinction. I mean, obviously this is a bit simplified, but in some ways, for at least examples that we're going to be doing today, I think is a pretty good way of thinking about it. So the CSS is the formatting portion, and the HTML is the content portion. Now you'll see why in a second why I'm explaining this, and that's because we will be hopping over into the store on the site, and we are going to be opening up a product here. Let's go to our prompted t-shirt. Okay, so let's say we want to take this and edit it, right? So we come to the first thing you should normally do is you come to your theme editor, you're like, okay, related products, let's go in here, let's see what we can do with the theme, with theme editor itself. And you can actually say bold the text, right? You can bold it, you can make it italics. But let's say you want to center it. It's like, how do you do that? Doesn't seem to be an obvious way to do that. So if we come over here, you can actually right click and hit inspect, right? And so this is Google Chrome. If you're on a different browser, it'll be some other button potentially, but all browsers will have this mode where you can go into this sort of developer mode and look at what's behind the scenes in the code. And so if you see this, you can actually expand it out and it'll kind of have these two columns here. And this one here is HTML. So that's the content that I was talking about previously, right? And then on the right side is the CSS. This is the styles. Now, this might look like a lot, and if you don't know how to read this, don't worry. It's not something that you need to really understand at this point. But I'm bringing this up because there is a visual component here. So you can see here as I'm highlighting different parts of the screen, there's these different items that are being highlighted, right? And that's because the content, the HTML portion, has a structure to it. So let me bring something up here. Okay, so this is a website that helps explain different coding concepts, but they have this visual here that I wanted to use. And you can see here, this is a page structure, right? So you've got this HTML, it's this bigger box here. And then inside those boxes, you've got a head, right? So that's sort of like the header part of the store. And you've got the body, which is like the contents. And then within the body, you've got these different items as well. So you can see there's these bigger rectangles and smaller rectangles. And that's essentially what you're seeing here. As I highlight these different sections, you can see how, we've got, we can actually go through and highlight all these different boxes inside, right? Now, this is important because we want to be able to target the box that contains the item that we want to edit. So in this case, the you may also like is right there, right? Now, this is a lot of text here, and you may have trouble finding it. So you can actually hit this button, and then you can, now when I just move my mouse, it'll highlight the different items, and then on the right side, it'll find the line, right? You can see how on the right side, it's just moving on its own. Maybe I should slow down. See, if I move here, it changes. If I move here, it changes. So now I'm just going to highlight that, click it, and then it highlights it. There we go. Right. So now you can actually see here, you may also like. It's right here. So this is called an element. This is all these different items are elements, and this is the one with the text that we want to edit. And you can see here we have these classes. It says class, related products, underscore heading, and then inline riches, text, h2. So all of them are separated by spaces, with probably the one that is the most descriptive being the related dash products underscore heading. And these classes are actually found on the right side. So you can see here, it matches related dash products underscore heading. There you go. It's right here as well. Inline rich text h2. It should show up somewhere here. Okay, maybe it doesn't actually have any styles here, but you can see here that this first one at least is there, and the h2 is right here as well, right? H2. So what does this do? So what this means is that if this element has this class, then the styles, the CSS, that are defined in it are going to apply to this. So this is like what this is essentially a group of settings, style settings, that are going to apply on this text, right? And so you can define any number of settings groups and then apply them wherever you want, right? So become a bit modular. So in this case, we've got the related dash products underscore heading. We have a bunch of settings that are related to it, and then we're saying take all these settings and make it part of the you may also like title. And so that's what it's doing. And you can actually see in here all the different settings that are being applied. Hope that makes sense so far. If it doesn't, just, you can always ask a question in the comments below, and I can try to clarify. But what we're essentially seeing here, once you click on this, is all the different settings that are applied on this text. So let's say we want to adjust the font size, for example. You can see here, font size is defined here. And then you got this kind of stuff that, may be a little bit difficult to understand. But this is what's defining it, right? Or you have like font, the color, for example, right? And that defines the color there. So what we can now do is, let's say if you wanted to center this, then you can actually start to play around with the settings. So for example, you can actually do it right in the browser itself. It's only going to affect your own browser. It doesn't affect the site overall, but it allows you to test what CSS styles you need in order to add it back into your custom CSS here. So let's do an example, right? I take this color and I can actually change it right here. Let's change it to as blue. You can see here the blue changes, right? Now, like I mentioned, it doesn't actually change it on your live site. It's only on your version of the site, like loaded in your browser. So this is only for you. In this case, it's only for me. So you're not going to see these changes. And then say, for example, the font size, right? Like I can change this multiplier. It says times 2.4. Let's make it times 3.4, right? So now it's even bigger. Or times 1.4. Now it's a smaller text, right? So you can kind of test out your changes directly in here. Making it a little bit more visual, easier to understand how your changes are affecting the rest of the site. So we want to center it, right? But there's no setting here that we can see that says, okay, you can center. And that's kind of where ChatGPT comes in. So let's bring ChatGPT up and we can say, how do I center text in CSS? And then, okay, let's just refresh. Let's try it again. How to center text in CSS. All right, okay, now it's working. So it's saying you can use this text align setting, right? So here it gives an example. It says dot container, open bracket, text align center, close bracket. So this dot container, that's a class, right? If this looks familiar to you, it's because you can see it has the same structure right here, right? So it's dot, a class name, open bracket, close bracket with all the settings in between. So what we can do is we can take this part of it, right? This is text align center. And we can place it, let's say right here, for example. And now you can see that you've centered your text, right? Simple as that. Okay, so now that we know that we can align it, how do you actually get this to work on the actual site? Because once I refresh this, you're going to lose all those changes, right? You can see here, we're all the way back to how it was before. Okay, so let's find our element again, inspect, and click here. Okay, so we've got this related products heading. So now we know that we can place the text align in here, right? It makes it centered. But what if we put it somewhere else? All right, so let's just take this out. Let's take this out. Okay. All right, that's fine. It's not applying right now. So what if we put it somewhere else? We put it, let's say right here. It still works, right? And in here, it still works, right? Oh, actually, no, I got to take this out. But it still works here. If I uncheck it, then it doesn't work. So there's actually a few different places where it can go, which gives you a little bit of flexibility. But there's a caveat here. And I'll show it to you right now by adding another section in here. Okay, so let's save. And let's refresh. Okay, so now we have, here, let's just make this a little bit wider. Okay, I just want to be able to see both of these at the same time. Now you can see here we have the related products section and the featured collection setting. Now, what happens if I go into this element again, right? So you may also like, and I add the, okay, so you can see here it actually looks a little bit different because we added the bold and the italics. So it added some HTML here on its own to make that happen. But the same thing applies, right? You got your H2 still here. So if we center it, we can just say put it over here. It's still going to center, right? It centers the whole thing. Let's take that out. Now, what happens if I actually place it in the H2 though? You can see here, both of these are being centered. Now, you may or may not want that, but this is an example of how you may make unintended consequences if you're not careful with where you place your code, right? And so with any changes you make sure to test, because you never know when you've changed something else until you really understand all the interdependencies in the code. So one way to avoid this from happening is using the custom CSS setting right here. And that's why I suggest using it, because when you make the custom CSS setting change here, it only affects the section that it's in, right? So if I'm in the related products section, any changes I make here, even if it's on the H2, which actually we can use, let's do that right now. So we can actually just copy and paste this, or even use the example here. But okay, let's do this, and let's remove this one here. So we only want the text align setting. You see here, I make the change. It only applies to this section, but this section actually is left alone. Unless, and if I want to make that change to this section too, then you only place it in here as well. And then, oh, because the font size is being affected there. See, so now you can make those changes independently in a way that is contained. So it's easier to find your changes because you know you're always putting it in the custom CSS sections, and all you have to do is go to the section that's been affected or the one that you want to change. And just overall allows it so that when you're making your code changes, you're not unintentionally changing something else somewhere else in your theme, right? So that's kind of like a fail safe as well to help prevent anything bad from happening. So the two things that I would say are really important if you're making any changes and you're new to making these code type of changes is, one, like I mentioned, duplicate your theme, and two, use the custom CSS section so it's contained to the section only. So that's an introduction on how you can make basic formatting changes yourself. You learned general concepts to make these formatting changes that can be applied to existing Shopify sections or any of the other customizations that we share on this channel too. Now, anyone with a bit more web development experience will know that we only touched on the very basics, but it should be enough to get you started. And like I mentioned, the examples here are a bit simpler, but once you get the hang of it, you can start trying to make more advanced style edits of your own. And if you start to run into challenges, think of it as a learning opportunity. Just make sure you're backing up your theme so that you always have a working version to go back to if you mess things up. So I hope that helps and you learned something new. And let me know in the comments below what you plan on editing. But that's all I've got for you today. Don't forget to sign up for our free email newsletter. Adding features and changes to your store is important and fun. But if you're building a business, ultimately you need to bring in profit. And in our newsletter, we share growth strategies to help you do just that. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.